Welcome to the Symphony Podcast. In person today, and December 27th is the date. I've been a couple weeks off from the pod, and Matthew, you did a solo episode 2 weeks ago. Man, it's great to see you.
It's good to be here in the new house too. Feels good.
Yeah. First podcast recording in the new house. As you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, we've got a nice background that we set up with a bunch of root strength. Vibey is the word we're going for.
And lots of snow on the ground outside too,
Yes,
which
sir.
is cool.
Yeah, actually, if I look over your shoulder, I can see the snowman we made yesterday, the little guy.
It's huge.
It's like about 2 feet tall. But it's actually rare because usually when it snows up in Seattle, it's like wet snow, it's 30, 32 degrees. It was 18 degrees here last night.
Yeah,
so
and it's fluffy snow too. Yeah. There was someone in our neighborhood on a snowmobile the other day.
No way.
That's pretty awesome.
Nice. Yeah, it's so cool to see all the kids sledding and stuff like that, and reconnecting with the childhood a little bit, going out there and digging around in the snow, making a snowman. So we've got a cool podcast today, a topic that we're both pretty stoked on, I think, and it's basically understanding your biology and understanding how we're wired as human beings and leveraging that to live in the way that you want to live, whether that's physical, whether that's professional. So why don't you frame it up? Because I know this is right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, I think I've been fascinated just with this topic in general of kind of understanding your biology and how that can make your life better. But I think the thing that draws me to it the most strongly is because even just listening to Andrew Huberman or Aaron Alexander or any of these guys that we follow pretty religiously, it's like these are not difficult things to be doing, but they're things that can make a huge impact on your levels of health and happiness. And so I think this is a good time to be talking about something like this too, because going into the new year, everyone's kind of looking for those things that they're going to put on their resolution list or ways that they can increase their health. And most people are getting back in the gym starting January 1st. So it's like, but I think these things that we're going to talk about today are things that are easy to continue, and they're very easy to just like add into your daily life. They're not going to take a ton of extra time. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of paying attention to these things and like really kind of grasping how your brain is wired and what your body really needs so that you can basically just increase your baseline level of health and overall happiness.
Absolutely. I think awareness of these things is like half the battle. Like
totally.
We're going to mention nose breathing at some point, and it's like I didn't even know that nose breathing was correlated with higher levels of health and that mouth breathing was correlated with all sorts of diseases and problems and things like that. A lot of people just have constant congestion. And when we exercise, we breathe through our mouth a lot, and that's actually not good. So just being aware of it, doing the exact same stuff that you're already doing, but applying these small shifts can have tremendous impact.
Yeah. I mean, we should jump into it with just the first thing that Huberman talks about in the morning with the light.
Yes, sir.
I know you have some good takes on that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the takes from Huberman that has resonated with me the most. Basically, what he says is the best way to stimulate the brain is through light. The eyes actually are part of the brain through evolutionary development of some type. The eyes slipped through the skull, essentially. So the eyes are literally part of the brain. They're not a separate system. And what he basically says is your exposure to light it dictates all sorts of things like dopamine and serotonin, but also it tells your body when to sleep, when to wake up, what your energy level should be like. So for example, if I want to get up in the morning, I mean, we all know this, but to hear the science behind it and Huberman talk about it, it's like now you actually are aware of it, like we were just talking about, and you see the benefit. So when I want to wake up in the morning, turning on a light, I think the next thing I want to do is get on Huberman's level and get one of those devices that slowly gets brighter over time, because that kind of mimics the sun. Up here in Seattle, it's dark from 4:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. every single day, so you can't really wake up and go to sleep with the sunlight. But exposing your eyes to lower, the other thing he said is if you want to be awake, you want lights above you in the room. So like right now we have lights just coming straight down. And if you want to tell your body and your brain to start slowing down, you want more lamps and like lower lights, because your eyes literally, like the angle at which light enters your eye tells your body it's daytime, it's nighttime, things like that. So having a light on late at night right above you, bright light, it's going to keep you up. Putting a lamp on lower, stuff like that. So I've been using that a ton, getting up much easier in the morning. And appreciate Huberman for the science.
Totally. And I think so many of us, myself included, first thing you do in the morning is grab your phone. And that is actually increasing your stress. If you look at the eyeball situation, and Huberman talks about this a lot too, it's like when you're looking at a phone, you're almost giving yourself tunnel vision, and that kind of actually triggers your brain to be stressed out. Whereas if you go outside before you look at the phone and kind of fix your eyes on a horizon, it expands your gaze, and it's like healthy for your eyes, healthy for your brain, and then it kind of like soothes your overall. It's waking you up, but then it's also kind of like combating stress at the same time. And then another thing that he talks about too is just how beneficial a simple morning walk is. Just getting outside and then moving forward through space, because apparently that actually, it literally quiets some of the circuits in your brain that are responsible for stress. So just kind of like exposing your brain and your eyes to natural light in the morning and moving forward through space will actually make you a less stressed out human being. So like within the first 5 minutes of your day, you can set that baseline at a really high level instead of just jumping right into the stressful world of what you have to do for work that day, looking at your emails. Like you're kind of just like sacrificing a lot by doing that. And like a way better, more beneficial way to wake up is just go outside, take a quick little walk, and then you can jump into whatever you have to do. It doesn't take much time. Yep. You could literally spend 5 minutes doing that.
Yep. So true. And to add to that, it becomes pretty easy, especially if you're a caffeine user like myself. It becomes easy to wake up in the morning, feel a little bit groggy, and then just either have a coffee or a root strength, which is what we've been just hot on recently. Since root strength came into my life.
Yep.
I've slowed down on the coffee intake and have seen tremendous benefits, but I like to wait 30 to 40 minutes at least, maybe an hour. Huberman says basically if you wait an hour to consume caffeine, you get your body going, you wake up naturally, and then you continue that. You basically add to that energy instead of training your body to be reliant on the caffeine in order to wake up. So that's a small tweak. It doesn't require that much discipline, and it's like pretty easy to do. Instead of just waking up and going straight to the coffee machine, you wake up, get your bag ready, go for your walk or have a shower, and then have the caffeine after that.
Right. Yeah, I've been pretty interested recently in kind of how dopamine release in your body really dictates your behaviors, and it kind of controls what you do in a lot of ways. And so one way that I kind of realized this recently is that I realized that I was very addicted to my phone because, and granted, I use my phone for a lot of good things too. It's not all just social media and like whatever. Like I actually work from my phone quite a bit. So if I don't have it, it's tough for me to do a lot of the things that I need to do. Mm-hmm. And so, and apparently, there's dopamine release that goes on when you get a notification or you're sending a text or like whatever. There's a lot of science behind that, how it actually like works on your brain like that. But what I didn't realize is, so my phone just like started not working about a week and a half ago or something like that. And it completely changed my behaviors because all of a sudden when my phone stopped working, it was like tunnel vision to, I need to get this thing fixed. Mm-hmm. Like, and even Tori noticed it too. She was like, "You're so agitated. Like, why are you?" And I was like, "I need this." And there's not many other things in my life where it's like, if something goes wrong, I drop everything until that thing is fixed. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? Usually I just let things kind of like roll off my shoulders and be like, whatever. But with this, it was like, I need to go get this thing fixed. Mm-hmm. I will spend however much money it's going to cost to get it fixed because I need it. Mm-hmm. And like, that is an addict behavior, right? It straight up is like, and I kind of had that moment of like, wow, that is really, really interesting. And so it kind of got me thinking more about like, what are the activities that release dopamine in your brain and kind of like how that dictates your pattern of behaviors and stuff. Because another thing that Huberman talks about is how dopamine is not pleasure itself. It's the expectation of pleasure. And so I think that's why we get addicted to these things, is because we associate these actions with the pleasure that we'll receive from doing them. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, it doesn't even matter the substance that you're addicted to. It's almost you're addicted to the behavior, the action that's going to like lead to it. So like if it's even coffee, you become addicted to the whole process of it. It's not just the actual coffee itself. Or like even with things that people say you can't get addicted to, with like weed or mushrooms or like anything like that, any type of substance, it's like it doesn't matter what it is. You can become addicted to the expectation of what's going to come from taking that. And so, and that's a really important thing to kind of understand, because then you realize how much your actions are dictated by how your brain is wired, right? And so then when you learn about these other things that are actually healthy for you, that can also give your brain that same dopamine release, it's like you can actually become addicted to things that are good for you.
Right.
And exercise is a huge one
right.
for that, because exercise releases a ton of dopamine in your brain. And then one thing that the brain will do for you is that once it receives that jolt to your reward system, it basically encourages you to repeat that behavior. And so if you get that from, like you can get that from drugs, but you can also get that from exercise. You can also get that from human connection. You can also get that from like probably nose breathing. Like there's so many healthy ways that you can get to that same mountain peak, but there's some things that are going to be sustainable and good for you. And then there's other things that can kind of ruin your life. And so it's like understanding what those things are is super beneficial.
Right. That's a great point. Nothing is inherently bad or inherently good. It's social media is not all bad and phones are not all bad, but if used improperly can be really bad. So it's like being aware of even how you use lights, right? Even how you breathe, just using it in the right way. I think the take that Huberman has, the fourth time we've mentioned him, but honestly, it's like we could just do like a Huberman review podcast where we just like
fangirls.
Just comment on Huberman's takes. Yeah.
Yep.
He basically says like to add on to what you're saying, it's not the reward itself that releases dopamine. It's the expectation of reward. So the punchline that he gives is celebrate the small wins, reward yourself incrementally, not have some long amount of work to some big goal. And then you get there, and we've all done this, like the end of the season comes around, championship game, you win the championship, and it's like, it feels so good. And then the next day it's like, well, we got to start training for next season. There's all that pleasure. It was kind of like the expectation was so high and it never really matches like the reality of what you experience. So in small ways, like, hey, I'm going to work for 25 minutes right now, be focused 100% of the time. And at the end of that 25 minutes, I'm going to get outside. I'm going to, treat myself essentially to a little bit of a break. I'm going to hop on the longboard, or I'm going to go to the gym or something. Like small incremental rewards can continue. It allows you to tap into this reward system and keep yourself motivated. I mean, if you connect stuff like professional work or just being a good human in any way to some positive reward, instead of seeing like your job as a chore or something like that. I think it was Adam Grant recently has had some good comments on like your job and your profession should not wear you out.
Yeah.
If you get to the end of the week and you're like, I just need to recharge my batteries. I'm so worn out from work, which is understandable, dude.
You hear that a lot.
You hear that a lot. Like, I heard it so much this past couple weeks with the holidays. Like, oh man, I'm just going to take a vacation, recharge. I think that's a red flag, because your day-to-day activities is ultimately what your life is. Your life is not the vacations. Maybe you get 2 weeks of vacation a year. So then, that's 2 out of 52 weeks is that like nirvana, happy times. And then 50 weeks is the reality of how you live.
And that vacation probably isn't all you've expected it to be, because it's that same exact thing. You put too much on that vacation time of being like, this is what's going to recharge me. Like, this is what I need. Yeah. And then you get there and you take all the same problems you have to that vacation. And then it's not this like nirvana experience that you were expecting. So then you take that back to your job that you hate. And then it's just like this cycle of, you can't always live in expectation, I suppose, of like, oh, things will be better when this or that. It's like, how can we focus on the things in a day-to-day scenario that'll just make us happier and healthier on that day instead of 2 weeks, 3 months down the road.
Yep. All right. Well, we got to transition to James Nestor here, and I've got a quick video to play. So let's do it.
show me the top 10 killers in the world, and I guarantee inflammation is behind 95% of them. So how we breathe affects inflammation in the body. And I should also note that there's been a ton of research looking into nasal breathing and how that is your first line of defense against COVID.
No way.
Not only does the nose filter out pathogens and bacteria and viruses, but Dr. Louis Ignarro, who won the Nobel Prize in the 90s, has found that release of nitric oxide interacts directly with viruses to kill them. So not only is this filtering, because we have nasal hairs, we have cilia, we have all these other structures, but the release of this nitric oxide, the first round of SARS, which was like 14 years ago, they would expose mammalian cells to nitric oxide, and those cells would live so much longer.
All right, there it is. So the point there being, we're living through this, ongoing pandemic. We gotta, it's not going anywhere. COVID's here to stay. So what can you do to basically use your biology to your advantage? Nose breathing literally protects you from respiratory viruses. And this is like a public service announcement that should be being blared from the rooftops.
Right.
Like, this should be on every single mainstream channel. This is something you can do. You can do a lot of other things, to vitamin D, you can live healthier, but simply breathing through your nose is going to protect you from viruses, which is such a cool concept. And, another one of those things that can benefit you a ton.
It's fascinating too. Yeah. And I feel like most people think that you don't get as much oxygen when you breathe through your nose, but I guess it's scientifically proven that you're actually increasing your oxygen uptake by like 10 to 20%. And I even realized this because I've been trying to experiment with that more when I'm exercising recently, especially when I'm doing cardio heavy things like on a treadmill or going for a run or anything like that. It's like when I get to that point where I'm tired, I try to emphasize the nose breathing, and I'll take like 3 quick breaths through my nose and then like 1 really deep one, and I feel everything just inflate almost, and I get this like boost of energy. Whereas when I take deep gulping breaths through my mouth, it almost has the opposite effect. Like it almost makes me just like try to gasp for more air, just because clearly it makes sense because you're actually getting more oxygen from your nose. So I think there's like a hump that you have to get over of being like, I'm not getting enough oxygen if I do that.
Yeah, you got to kind of train yourself. If you're a mouth breather, especially when you exercise, it's not easy to transition.
Not at all.
I first heard about this when I was in Mexico, and the only thing you can do down there is surf or run. There's there's some gyms, but I was doing a lot more running, and I would try and only breathe through my nose, and it's like hard. You feel, you just want to breathe through your mouth. Like your body's telling you like that's where you get more oxygen, but eventually 2-3 more weeks of it, you're like, whoa, all of a sudden you're first of all, your nasals start to open up, that congestion goes away. Even if you have, and this is going to be kind of gross, but if you have some type of congestion, when I ride my bike or exercise, breathing through the nose, you start to feel like boogers coming out. Like, you literally have like boogers coming down on your freaking mustache. Right. I just kind of embrace the process.
Embrace the boogers.
I do. And like, if you see me riding my bike, if you look closely, I probably got some boogers on my mustache. But when I get home later, I'm like, whoa, I'm cleared out and feeling way better. So people embrace that.
I've seen people taping their mouth shut. Yeah, like some people do that overnight. Actually, I'm not that extreme, but something that I've started to incorporate into my workouts is I'll keep a sip of water in my mouth while I'm doing stuff, just so I can't breathe through my mouth. And I mean, we could do a whole episode on breath control too. I mean, you got Wim Hof style. You have all these workshops now, especially in like LA and Venice, who are doing breath work ceremonies and stuff. And it's happening all over the world. I'm just kind of like poking fun at the Venice community right now. But just in general, like I've experienced a breath work workshop, and it's like hallucinogenic. It's psychedelic. It really is. Like you can get your body to these states of euphoria simply by the way that you're intaking oxygen, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I've done some cold water exposure stuff, cold plunges, and when we were in Mexico last year, the routine was 4 rounds of 40 breaths, Wim Hof style, as deep in as you can, and then let it out. As deep in as you can, then let it out. You do 4 rounds of 40, and in between each one, you do a breath hold.
And you realize you can hold your breath for so long after that. It's crazy.
And you can get in that cold water so much easier. You're essentially like calming the nervous system, because when you get in the cold water, your body's like freaks out, you know, you want to get out of there. But when you do the breath work before, I've seen people that have never been in cold water get into literal ice water, 37, 38 degree water for 6-7 minutes.
Yeah.
Their first time.
Because you're priming your senses.
Right.
Which is
Pretty
the same
cool.
thing with like fasting. Because if you haven't done that before, people look at me like I'm crazy when I'm like, I don't like to eat before I work out. But I genuinely think that if you're in a fasted state, your senses are more alert and you kind of have more of like a survival instinct. And so sometimes I think your physical output is actually stronger in a lot of ways, especially if you equate it to like how predators work in the wild. It's like they go for days sometimes without food, but in that time they're on the hunt. So like their senses are primed.
Yeah, you get more energy
because they're trying to survive.
Yeah, and we did that episode after I did the 24-hour fast. We kind of reflected on that.
That's right. Yeah.
I think this is kind of the ultimate take that I maybe didn't throw in at this episode, but I'll share now, which is like, I think humans are, this is not news, but I've been noticing how humans are wired for hunting for long periods of time without food. And in the modern lifestyle, we don't get that. And so we have all sorts of woes, mental stress, physical challenges, all sorts of things that come as a result of this modern lifestyle, which benefits us a ton. But knowing that your body needs a certain amount of stress, a certain amount of suffering. And when you give that to yourself in an intentional way, whether that's through exercise or cold exposure or whatever,
it could
fasting,
be problem
problem solving.
Yeah.
Problem solving is huge. You can kind of, it's almost like your body's hungry for these things and you're starving it if you don't. So that's why I love, like, it's not fun necessarily to get in the cold water. It's not fun at all. But afterwards, you always feel better. You're like, oh, I feel so much better. I'm so glad I did that. Have you ever finished a workout and been like, that was a waste of time?
Never. Yeah. I mean, every single time, honestly. Yeah. And like, it's even during it, it's sometimes terrible. But afterwards, you're always happy you did.
Yeah.
So cold water is kind of a difficult thing to add into your day, right? I mean, we started this episode by saying these things are going to be super easy, but one thing that actually is easy is the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the Aaron Alexander concept of just body alignment and body awareness with every single thing that you're doing. And reading some of his stuff has been interesting too, because he's talking about on like a second to second basis.
Right. That's
like,
what I love that, dude.
Yeah. And I even talking about him made me be like, kind of adjust the way that I'm sitting, because I'm like, because the angle that he goes at it from is like the way you're physically representing yourself is constantly sending signals to your brain about your level of safety, almost, or not even almost, like that's what it is. So like if you're sitting in this hunched over kind of like weak position, like, and you can predate this to back when this was actually important and you had to have your senses super high, because like if you're not prepared to run or move at any moment, you might get attacked by like a tiger or something. But he's saying like if you're in this hunched over position, you're actually sending signals to your brain that you're timid and that you're not confident and that you're weak, essentially. And there was even this other study, I think it was called something like the Superman pose study or something like that. We can link it later. It's probably not even the name of it. But like actually how standing in these certain postures creates more confidence in individuals. And like the stance that they were talking about is like the superhero stance, basically. I think that's what it was called, the superhero stance, where your legs are a little bit spread, your arms are down at your side, but like engaged, and your chest is out, your head's up, like you're in this very strong, confident position, and how that actually triggers your brain to feel more confident, more capable, stronger, and and so I think that's something to pay attention to on a day-to-day basis. Is just like, what is my posture like right now? Like, what signals am I sending not only to myself, but to others? Like, because that shows up in conversation too. It's like, if you're talking to somebody and they're kind of like slouched over or looking away or just like really unsure of themselves, you're not going to have as strong of a connection with that person as if they were looking at you straight in the eye. They're standing up straight. They're like nodding their head. They're engaged as you're talking to them. Like, it's just a different energy that you create, not only for yourself, but for others as well. And so it's just like paying attention to those things can actually make a difference in terms of how much confidence you have in yourself.
Rule number 1 of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life is stand up straight with your shoulders back.
Yep.
And it's like such a simple thing that you can do.
Yeah.
And it can have, like you said, tremendous impacts in all different areas. So let's review, because there is a lot in this episode. I feel like,
It's just basically point people to Andrew Huberman.
but I mean, that's what we always do. But I think, number 1 was
Going outside in the morning.
going outside, light, exposing yourself to light,
Taking walks.
Body awareness was the most recent one with Alexander. Every moment is an opportunity to construct your body. So we often think about, we're constructing our body when we're in the gym, when we're doing yoga. Like we take these small little times throughout the week, throughout the day, to quote unquote construct your body, but you're actually impacting the way that your body is created and constructed at all times.
Yeah.
And what else do we have?
There's exercises in there.
Nose breathing.
Nose breathing.
It's hard to even remember them, and we just talked about them.
I know. Actually, something that you just said reminded me of this quote that I actually wrote down in my notebook the other day from a book called Kook by Peter Heller. I think that's his name. He was like 48 when he learned how to surf, and he basically kind of writes about his experience with it. It's a really good book. It was interesting, and if you're into surfing, like, I don't know, you would eat it up. But the quote says, "We need surf or dance or yoga because it reconnects us with our animal bodies. For a little while, we practice moving through the world with rhythm, with an intention of efficiency and power. Without it, we become just a bunch of walking heads." And I think that's important because, and I don't even know how to really describe it, but like attaching to natural rhythms is, I think, a really important thing for your body and your mental health. And I think that's a big thing in yoga, right? It's like connecting your breath with your body's movement and like finding more mobility because of the sequence of like movements that you're doing. Like if you do it in a certain order, your body opens up more than if you try to like jump from step 1 to step 6, you're going to hurt yourself. Right. And so it's like, and surfing is the same way. It's like, you have to find that natural rhythm and keep your body's natural alignment, or else you're just going to get totally chacked. Like you're going to get thrown over the wave. It's not going to work. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to be pissed.
Right.
But when you connect to that rhythm, like, and we've spent plenty of time on that side of the fence.
I don't know
too,
why. That's so funny. Yeah. You're going to hurt yourself, be pissed.
It's true. I mean, hopefully not. Like, hopefully you have a good mindset about it. But like just attaching to those natural rhythms of the world, I think it's a really cool experience, but it's also so healthy. And like, that's why I think you're seeing more and more of like the ecstatic dance practices coming up. Or
What's that?
Have you never heard of ecstatic dance?
Never.
Oh man. Okay. I haven't done it, but there's groups all over the world who just meet up and just throw on some loud music, and just the whole point is to just like move, like just dance,
just any direction,
just let it go.
No
like,
rules.
No, don't think about it.
This is like free dancing. I don't know.
Same thing, like same concept.
This. Yeah, I've seen this when I was on the beach in Santa Monica at the drum circle, and people are like upside down, like doing crazy motions, and
it's like just sink into your body.
Yeah.
Like just do
no
whatever
judgment.
feels
Dude,
good.
This is something that I don't know when I heard this, but I overconsume information clearly, but we basically have cultural, this is Aaron Alexander was talking about this. Culturally, we're trained to move in certain ways. So if you look at how a kid moves, my girlfriend's nephew, for example, I watch how he moves, how he runs around. He doesn't do it in like a really good form. Like he's just falling on the ground, running backwards, getting up, flailing his body in different directions. And then as we get older, it's like we attach, okay, that body motion is not cool or not like acceptable in this scenario. Like if you're Aaron Alexander talks about this, if you're at like a bus stop and you're doing squats, or you're in like a deep lunge,
people are
or
like,
something,
who's that guy? Like, why is he doing that?
Yeah, why is he doing that?
Or even just the concept of walking on 2 legs, like that. I mean, obviously we need to walk around and like we run with 2 legs, but also like when you look at little kids, they're crawling around. They're like bear crawling. They're in a perfect squat without even trying. And then they're just like rolling around. They're using their full body for every single motion instead of being like, oh no, this is a motion for like my legs, or this is something that I do with my arms. It's like, it's almost like reconnecting with the body as like one thing instead of all these different isolated limbs. And because I mean, how could it not be? It's supposed to work all together. It is one fluid thing. So it's like, how can you find levels of movement where you're actually engaged with every single part of your body? And I think that's what alignment is. That's how you find peak mobility, peak flexibility. Like that's is the ability to have that mind muscle connection with everything that's going on in your body.
Yep. I love it, man. Yeah. I did a yoga class last week. And the teacher was talking about when you feel your ego coming in and saying you're not in the right position or you should be going further, shut that down.
Totally.
Like, when we've all been in a yoga class, if you've been in a yoga class, there's a moment where you're like, how dumb do I look?
Right. Or like, am I like sticking my ass out? Yeah. Like totally.
Is my downward dog like, good?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. What he said was, it's what's useful for you right now. And everyone's going to have a different, like kind of the kook point, right? It's like, if you go out there and you look to your left and there's some guy ripping 8-foot bombers and you're like, well, that's never going to happen for me. Or if you try and do that, you're never going to be able to do that. But if you just slowly, incrementally improve, I think incremental improvement's like the topic of my life, but
that's a good topic of your life.
I love it, man. All right. Well, 31 minutes in, time to wrap it up. Till next week. Any more final takes?
I think that's it. We covered it.
Sweet.
Go move that body around a little bit.
Yeah. Hopefully moving right now. If you're listening to a podcast, you got an opportunity to be moving. And
that's right.
Appreciate everybody. Happy New Year. And we'll see you next Monday.